Okay, now, who's awake now? Okay, you ready to learn some stuff here today? In a responsive mode. Because remember, it's not passive here. We're here to learn. We're here to become wealthy investors, educated people, correct? Especially in these current times. We all know that the rich, basically, in these times like this, is the people who are educated, who are ready to take advantage of the opportunities, who are going to get rich, correct? Correct?
Correct.
Fantastic. So, as Nigel said, accounting is especially important, and your planning, and making sure you save tax. Would we all agree that if we can save some tax, we're going to increase our wealth exponentially?
Yes.
Just as important as making money is in saving the money by how you save your tax, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes?
Yes.
Good. We're going to make sure we're awake here. So what we're going to do is today we're going to be covering a lot on tax and how to save some tax and keep the taxmen far away from your door, and also how to keep the gold-digging scumbags far from your assets. Who knows that there's gold-digging scumbags out there that want to take your assets?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I'll show you some frightening statistics with lawsuits very shortly that will show you that on average, the average person right now in New South Wales and Victoria gets sued 3 times in their lifetime. 3 times. Okay. That's more risky than having a car crash. So, is it important to insure your assets?
Yes.
Okay. So, have what I've got to say of great value and importance here today?
Yes.
Is your mind switched on?
Yes.
Great. Let's get started. Okay, background, that's myself, good-looking man there. Okay, basically been doing this for 20 years. Accountant, lawyer, investment guru. Sounds good anyway. Founder of a successful law, accounting and financial planning company. Got started in business at a seminar just like this. Seriously, 8 years ago, I basically was working as a lawyer. I'd worked for 10 years in the ATO. I left the ATO. Why? I was frustrated. I'd been there 10 years. I wanted to do more in life. And after mid-2000, when I was sitting there at Arthur Robinson Hedderwick's, the biggest law firm in Australia, absolutely depressed every day, not wanting to go to work, thinking life's got to be more than this. I had a senior job, one of their best tax planners, and still, I was hating my job, hating my life. And interestingly, I went to a guy called Peter Span's seminar on wealth and mindset, and totally turned my thinking around, and today, I'm now basically in business doing this. So, no matter where you're at today, you can do something about your life and make it happen, which is really what 21st century is all about, changing your mindset and doing something in your life to make a difference. Okay. So, essentially, accounting, law, planning is what I've basically done. Right here, today we're here to talk about accounting and asset protection. Okay, that's my wife and business partner, and I have to show her, otherwise I'll have trouble at home. That's our firstborn son, William. Now, who's heard of Joel Bauer here? Anyone? Now, Joel Bauer says that it gives great credibility if you've got a family. So he said, if you don't have a family, make one up. So this could be my family, but it may not be. But it actually is my family. But that's my firstborn son, William. Good looking like his father. That's our twins, James and Edward. Very, very cute. And our youngest, who all our clients who met him say looks exactly like me. So, the best looking of the family. Okay, why am I here today? 2 reasons. 1, to help you, firstly, keep the money you make. Now, 21st century educates you to build wealth and how to make a lot of money, but if you're going to build wealth, you also want to keep the money that you make. It's a bit like when you go out and you are going to build a house. Before you build your house, would you agree that having a foundation in place is critical?
Yes.
If you tried to build a house and ignore the foundation to save 10, 20 grand, do you think you'd have problems with the house?
Yes.
Do you think you'd have problems with the house?
Yes.
Okay. So how important is your structuring and tax planning as you're going ahead to build your wealth?
Very good.
Do you think the rich like Kerry Packer, Richard Branson, have good tax advisors?
Yes.
There's a story about Kerry Packer's tax advisor, his top guy called Neville Coombs, actually. Neville was known to basically get Kerry Packer's tax down to 1-2% every year. Just amazing tricks he would do. One of my favourite stories Neville Coombs told to me by a client who knew Neville really well was his friend went in to see Neville Coombs before he actually worked for Kerry. and he had a contractual problem. And he sat down with Neville Coombs and said to Neville, look, I've been to 3 accountants and lawyers, no one can get me out of this contract problem. So Neville Coombs looked at it for 2 minutes, put it back there and said, the short answer is I can get you out of your $1 million contract. Guy goes, great. He said, but before I tell you, I want a $5,000 cheque. He said, before I do it, I want a $5,000 cheque. The guy goes, let me think about it. He goes, that's fine. Half an hour later, he walks back in with a $5,000 cheque, gives him the answer, he's out of the contract. Do you think that was a good deal? Yes. He could have paid $1,500 to another lawyer who could have researched for him at $250 or $300 an hour and come back saying, sorry, you can't get out of the contract. Is that pretty typical what happens?
Yes.
Really, the professional services needs to become a lot more what I based, value-based. There's a guy called Murray Gleeson, the Chief Justice of the High Court. You heard of him? Yeah. He retired about 5 months ago. And interestingly, Murray Gleeson, in his final speech, said the biggest thing we need in accounting and law is a transformation in the mindset in the way clients are charged and looked after. Because he said, today, the time billing promotes inefficiency. He said, you think about it. You go to someone fresh out of law school, they'll charge you, say, $150 an hour, take 20 hours to do the job, you'll pay $3,000 and get nothing for it. When Murray Gleeson said, really, he said you might go to someone else who's a brilliant lawyer who might take 2 hours and then they get less rewarded even though they find a solution. So he said really more and more the market is starting to demand, and he was basically encouraging the legal profession and accountants to clean up their act and basically become more value-based and giving clients top service to give clients results. Because my approach is very simple. If you had an opportunity to invest $10,000, say in a deal that would make you another $20,000, would you do it?
Yes.
Correct? Yeah. Okay. Would you invest, say, $10,000 in accountants that could knock $30,000 extra off your tax than anyone else could?
Yes.
Simple, isn't it? Not a no-brainer. So really what 21st century accounting is about is value add and really giving clients results. So firstly, keeping the money that you make, so essentially you become wealthy. And rather than the taxman walks away with your wealth, you walk away with it. Would you agree that the ATO charges a little bit more tax than maybe is reasonable? Who here thinks they don't pay enough tax? Anyone? Who thinks they pay too much tax? Yeah. Those who didn't put up your hand, come and see me afterwards and I'll get it from you. Okay, build your wealth by intelligent investing and business building. So keeping the money that you make, building your wealth by intelligent investing and business building. Okay, why am I here? Really, you increase your wealth by, 1, increasing income, reducing expenses. Now, this is simple stuff, but what we often forget this. As we focus on increasing our income, we forget that many companies and investors become great by the way they plan their tax and by the way they structure their affairs. And at the end of the day, we don't want you paying any less tax than you legally have to. Kerry Packer, when asked about tax minimisation, said anybody who pays more tax than they legally have to is an idiot. Actually were his words. I'm quoting exactly what he said. And 1936, in a very famous House of Lords case in England, one of the judges said, it's every person's right to legally minimise their tax to the lowest amount they have to. So, do you have the right to minimise your tax?
Yes.
Absolutely. No matter what a government authority says to you, do you have the right to minimise your tax?
Yes.
Absolutely. Not evade your tax, minimise it. Okay, it's all about keeping the money that you make. Okay, let's just go through our agenda for the day. Firstly, we're going to look at tax secrets of the rich. In other words, the tricks and loopholes that Kerry Packer, that Richard Branson, and that those who are well off know how to avoid tax. Some tricks for pay-as-you-go earners that, believe me, I say this every seminar, and I say 95% of accountants don't know this, and what's quite funny, some of the stuff I say, people come up to me and say, but my accountant told me I can't do that. And I said, that's what I just said. One of my favourites is wealth seminar expenses, like coming to expenses like this at 21st century. 95% of accountants will tell you you cannot claim your expenses, because they will say to you, you haven't earned any income from it. I just laugh. I've had accountants who work for me who said the same thing, and I said, let's go to the ATO website. And I've shown them the ATO website, but it can be claimed if you know what you're doing. Who wants to be able to claim all their expenses in their education? Easy. Okay, Tax secrets for business, investors and traders. Now, who here is a businessman or investor or trader? Who wants to be? Okay, virtually everyone in the room. Okay, and finally, some inside secrets to avoid the dreaded tax audit. Now, who wants to keep the taxman far away from their door? Some inside secrets. Hot off the press from someone who worked in audit for the ATO and who's got inside contacts. Seriously, who will tell you some secrets, as well as how would you like to know some tricks on how to deal with the ATO if they do come to your door? Anyone? Yeah. Okay, I'll show you a few tricks there. One of my favourite things, I'm going to cover a little bit at the end of my presentation because I can't help myself. One of my biggest things is I love empowering Australians against authority and the system. In other words, every now and again I just like to, stir up and annoy government authorities just for a bit of fun. just for the enjoyment of it. Even though I do seminars, I'm flat out. Still, every now and again, if a client comes to me and says, will you represent me against ASIC or the ATO, I can't help myself, I'll say yes. And I'll do it. So I still do it. Represent against an auditor, against an ASIC investigation. Why? Because I just know certain things I can say that as soon as you say it, you basically trap them. It's really good fun. So, show you a few tricks of how you can legally. How would you like to know some little tricks I've used to get out of parking fines? Or how, when I decide, in the last few elections I've just been too busy to vote, and how I got on my voting fines. Who wants to know that? Okay, just a few little added bonuses you're going to get from today, which you didn't plan on. Asset protection secrets. How the rich basically protect their assets and keep the gold-digging scumbags far from their wealth. You want to keep the scumbags away from your wealth? Okay. Superannuation. Now, that has become critically important now. Since last year, 1 July, you now basically can withdraw pensions tax-free from superannuation after 60. And the importance of superannuation and long-term wealth-building plan cannot be underestimated now. I used to be a big critic of superannuation. I've completely changed my thoughts on it now, and you'll see why. Fourthly, estate planning. Now, I guess probably half of you don't have a will based on my experience in speaking at these events. But most of you who do have a will, I can guarantee you your will does not protect against the family court, does not protect against a taxman, and does not protect against bankruptcy of your children or your loved ones. So I'm going to cover that briefly too. Okay, offshore, just a little bit of an insight as what you can and can't do legally. You want to hear some of that? Yes. Again, all legal, don't worry. I'm not into doing anything that's not by the book, but just dispelling a lot of the illusions and myths about offshore, what's allowed, what's not allowed. Remember something. Look, the media really is about representing the government and the interests to put the fear and mould your mindset. You know what I'm saying? The media is there to just input stuff into you. They put fear into you. And I remember 2-3 years ago when it came out in the media about Operation Wickenby, which was where Paul Hogan and Glenn Wheatley, they got targeted for tax evasion. And a few of my clients rang me quite panicky and just said, look, what do I do now? And I said, I'll guarantee you that the ones who've done that, they haven't done any legitimate planning. They've basically set up structures to evade tax and they've created false deductions in their tax returns. I guarantee you. Sure enough, it came out it was. So there's certain things you cannot do, which is illegal. There's certain things that you can do, and it's perfectly legal. It's about education. 6 is some mindset secrets. In other words, a little bit of introduction about mindsets and some of the mentality in dealing with the ATO, in dealing with tax, in dealing with asset protection. Okay? How many of you think in how you deal with an auditor and your mindset is important? Yeah. About how you deal with government officials and your mindset is important? Yeah. If you're going from a position of the underdog, do you think you'll come worse off? Yes. If you come in the position of power, do you think you'll be better off? Yes. Let me ask you something. What are government officials called? Public servants, correct? Okay. If there's a public servant, who's their master? According to our constitution, we are. So why can you not say to a government official, I'm your master, you're my servant, here's your directions? I know it's always as simple as that, but just thought I'd put it out there. I know someone does that, by the way, and gets quite amazing results. Really, seriously, I cannot stress it enough. In building wealth, in dealing with authority, dealing with anyone, when you just know your rights and know who you are, and you deal respectfully, courteously, But with power, you'll be astonished at the results you get and how people will come round to what you want from them. I've had some remarkable experiences in dealing with government authorities, which I might share some of them later, just by simply the way you handle it. Okay, and finally, a little bit on global challenges ahead, because we're in times which, according to the media anyway, are recessionary. That's what the media describes that as anyway. But we do have some challenges ahead, but in those challenges are extraordinary opportunities to build wealth. Because in times of economic correction, does wealth disappear? No. What happens to it? Changes hands. Do you want to be in the receiving end or the giving end? Absolutely. Okay. And then moving forward as to how 21st century accounting can basically help you to move forward. Just a couple of quotes, because as a lawyer you have to make quotes just to look good. Alfred the Great, a famous English king in the 8th century, said about ignorance, how knowledge liberates, knowledge is power. The saddest thing about any man is to be ignorant. The most exciting thing is he knows. Knowledge, would you agree, stands you out from the crowd, correct? Education, what you know. Just in the good book, there's a little passage that says, "My people perish through lack of knowledge. Because you rejected knowledge, I will reject you." So very simply, when we don't have knowledge and we're ignorant, the universe does not cater for us. Would we agree the universe doesn't care of our motive? It just looks at what we know, correct? It's a bit like the law of gravity. If you jumped off a building to fly, and you were ignorant of the law of gravity, would that save you? It wouldn't save you, would it? No. So likewise, if you don't know universal laws and don't know the law, ignorance will not save you. So you must make education your highest priority to know more. And the more you know, the more you transform, the wealthier you get. Okay, there's our screenshot. You ready for the action now? Yes. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Tax seekers of the rich. Frank begins to seriously question which is worse, death or taxes. Okay, this will shock you to the core. Our favourite ex-President George Bush. Some alarming facts about tax. Australia is the third highest taxed nation in the world. Now, is anyone surprised by that? No. We have about 18 taxes at the moment or something. It's a fair few. The average person, according to Ray Regan of the National Taxpayers Association, pays 69% in taxes. Now, that might sound insane, but think about it. You've got income tax, you've got GST. In business, you've got payroll tax, which how on earth anyone in their demonised mind conjectured that up, I don't know. Stamp duty. I mean, seriously, payroll tax, think about it. Basically, in business, you're taxed for giving people jobs. I mean, think about it. You're taxed for giving people jobs. And the worst thing is, I've been contracted by top businesses, to find ways around payroll tax, and that is the hardest tax of all of them to find ways around. Seriously, it is the hardest tax. They've tied the law up so tightly. I've only found about 2 ways to getting around them, and both of them are so complex that most businesses say, oh, I'm just not going to do it. Okay, alarming facts about tax. Government compliance. The average small business spends 1 day per week just purely on government compliance and bookkeeping issues, according to Ray Regan. Is that a lot? Yeah. So 20% of your business wages and overheads are basically to cover government requirements. That's what you're facing in Australia. 48% of businesses go bankrupt due to the ATO. Now, who's shocked by that one? 48%. Now, why so high? Think about it. The way it works is this. Most people who start in small business, who's the last person who normally gets paid? Well, business owners, yeah, but business owners, or there's someone else, the ATO. So in other words, you collect the group tax, the GST, you pay out overheads, money goes out, money goes out, money goes out. Suddenly, end of the 3-month period, you've got a 45 grand best bill. Does that sound pretty common? Yeah. You'd be surprised. Most businesses, when cash flow's coming in, they're not putting aside for the tax. It's common. Now, the way it works is this. Do you think the ATO says, that's no problem, we'll wait for the next couple of years, get back to us when you're ready? They're a bit like insurers. They want their piece of the pie now. So the ATO will basically serve notices on you, and if you basically keep on falling behind in your tax, what they do is they do a winding up order of your company, or they seek to basically shut you down and then take the tax from you, and they've got provisions to make you personally liable in certain situations. So hence, the number, if you go down to courts and you have a look at the lists of in the magistrates and local courts, you'll be shocked at how many are Commissioner of Taxation versus such and such, Commissioner of Taxation versus such and such, winding up application, winding up application. Just daily happens. So one of the biggest things is knowing how to deal with that and really being aware of this issue. Because if 48% of business goes bankrupt due to it, it's something you can't ignore. When you think about it, considering that in the first 5 years, 80% of small business fails, and the next 5 years, a further 80% fail, now that's a 96% failure rate over 10 years. If you times it by 48%, you're looking somewhere around about the 46% mark of businesses will go bankrupt in the next 10 years due to the ATO. Is that huge? So if in this room, if we've got about, say, 40 odd people, started in business, and in 10 years' time, of the 40 of you, 38 basically would be bankrupt and 2 would still be in business. And of those 38 people, about 18 people would have been bankrupted from the ATO. It's insane, isn't it? That's what we're facing. In Australia, we've got a progressive income tax system in Australia. Now, for those of you who are a little bit out of the box, do you know where progressive income tax actually originated from? Anyone want to hazard a guess? In terms of the Australian model? A bloke called Karl Marx, 1848. I'll totally seriously. Marx in 1848, when you read the 10 planks of a Communist Manifesto, which means to basically centralise wealth into government hands, one of them was a progressive income tax to take the labour of the individual and centralise it into the hands of government and create a form of economic slavery. That's actually what it does when you think about it. Because when you're paying income tax, you're working for somebody else and you're paying a portion of your labour to somebody else, your master. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Yes. It's actually a form of economic slavery. So income taxes were, the only time income taxes really were common before the last 100, 120 odd years was in Rome they had it. But most economies, income tax wasn't called by that name, it was more like feudalism, which feudalism was back in the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries where lords basically ruled over lands and peasants worked the lands and paid the lords. And that's why, you think about it, with property you got landlord. And if you actually look at your property titles, you'll see, I know in WA, if you go and look at your property titles, you'll see that you've got to pay a peppercorn of rent each year to own the property to your lord. It's bizarre. The more you look into this kind of stuff, you find some really intriguing stuff. The more you earn, the higher the tax rate you pay, plus indirect taxes, GST, stamp duty. So we've got a lot of taxes we pay in Australia, and the importance of planning to minimise them or reduce them cannot be underestimated. Just to give you an example of the effect tax can have in your wealth creation plan. $100,000 invested for 10 years at 20% per annum return, okay? Being a bit conservative here, but let's go by 20%. If you pay 46.5% tax, you'll have about $441,143.51 after 10 years. Not bad. If you pay 30% tax, you'll have an extra $231,000 in your hand. Is that good? Yes. Would you like that? Yes. So by using a corporate structure for your wealth building rather than an individual name, you immediately add an extra $231,000 to your wealth. Now, if you pay no tax, and don't ask me how at this stage, 1.378 million. Now that's an extra $706,000. Now is that huge? It's massive. Why? Because if you do your compounding and do your calculators, you'll actually see that the more tax you can save by some good planning, it exponentially has a flow-on effect. Mel Emery calls it money at a discount. For paying now to structure yourself today, you're creating a cash flow at a discount for the future. Let's have a look at 20 years. 46.5% tax, you'd have from your $100,000 at 20%, $841,920. Not bad. I mean, 20 years from now, how much it's going to be worth is not a question with inflation, but $841,000. If you can get your tax down to 30% by some corporate structuring and some trusts, 1.6 million. So you just created an extra $777,000 of wealth. Is that good?
Yes.
If you use superannuation, which I'm putting into the equation now, and you get your tax down to 15%, which is all you pay in a self-managed fund. So if rather than invest that $100,000, say, in your own name or through a corporate structure, you invest through a self-managed super fund, and you're willing to wait 20 years for your money, you're going to have $2.9 million. An extra $1,307,000. Again, could you do that?
Yes.
Do you think in your retirement you can do an extra $1,307,000? Anyone?
Yes.
And if, of course, you pay 0% tax, and again, don't ask me how, $5.2 million. An extra $2,357,000. Who could use that? Okay. So in other words, how you plan your tax will make a very big difference to your wealth building. A massive difference. Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad says that to be wealthy, you really need the following. Firstly, sales and marketing. You've got to have the ability to sell and market in business or in wealth.